My name is Juan Gonzalez. I'm with Vulcan Materials, and I'll be talking about ready-mix concrete or producer success with EPDs. Give a brief history of our pathway to the EPDs. Look at quantitative examples from our approach on EPDs, and then look at some relationships with GWP and other metrics, and then best practice for data collection. Hopefully that's not too boring. So company introduction, Vulcan Materials is a leading construction material company that has been in business for over 100 years. We are in the country, the largest aggregate producer in the country, and have end-use services for asphalt, producing recycled materials, also accepting inert material for acceptance, such as landfills, and then concrete ready-mix operations. We have operations in Virginia, D.C. market, Metroplex, and then also Northern California. To speak a little more on the concrete sustainability front, I'll focus on Central Concrete Supply, our operations in Northern California, which is a leader in low-carbon concrete offerings and also collaboration efforts. As you look through the timeline here, and back in 2013, Central Concrete Supply was the first ready-mix producer to offer EPDs for the construction industry. As you can see here, they had that newsletter that went out, Central Concrete announcing its first environmental product declaration. And it really all started with the leadership of our general manager at the time, Jeff Davis, who really initiated and developed and really developed it within, assigning someone within Central Concrete, and also got EPDs to the market to better differentiate ourselves as a leading concrete producer in the sustainability space. But I do have to go back in history and highlight the EPD development. Back in 2003, Jeff Davis, he invested in extra silo capacity at each of our concrete facility plants within our territory there in Northern California. And so we had our cement, we had our fly ash, and we also, he wanted a third alternative SCM, so he brought in slag and worked with the cement producers in the market, and one of the cement producers was able to import slag into the Sacramento port here and terminal, which was able to service the Northern California market with slag. And with this, give us an opportunity to come in with a marketing branding approach of what we call the EF technology for low carbon CO2 mixes. And EF standing for environmentally friendly. An example of offering was, for example, here, EF30, it basically identified as a 30% cement replacement mix, all the way up to an EF70, which replaced 70% of the cement content in the concrete mix design. And this is an approach that is being implemented today, right? You have a few producers out there going with their own marketing approach on sustainability, but we were slightly ahead of our time when we were going in with this branding and marketing approach, so much so that we even had, we developed and offered general concrete notes and specifications for Division 3s, as you can see here. And if you look at that 2.1E on Portland cement, you could identify the type of cement that was available there in California, but you don't even see type 1L or any blended cements as a lever for that option. But we went away from this branding marketing approach because we didn't see the value on spending marketing dollars that way, because our customers didn't want this, our direct customers. Some of our indirect customers were asking for this, and reason why we invested in it, but our direct customers really didn't care for this. So that's when EPDs came into the fold. And my understanding of our EPD development started back in 2011, and you can see in 2011 we were also one of the founding members of the Carbon Leadership Forum, which helped produce the PCR, and some other folks which I'll identify a little later. And I believe Jeff was reading an article and something about EPDs in a magazine or whatnot, and he reaches out to Chris Erickson with Climate Earth, and he challenges him with three requests. In my understanding, it went something like, I want Central Concrete to be the first in the country to have concrete EPDs I want to have EPDs on every mix design that we produce, and I want to offer EPDs on every bid. So brand new tool, never been developed. Chris Erickson gets to it. At the same time, the PCR is being developed in 2012, or actually it gets released in 2012 of November. And here are some of the, some screenshots of the first EPD that was developed and some of the folks that were involved in it. So, and that's when we're able to publish thousands of EPDs in 2013. And with that came, having EPDs on every single submittal that we had. Here's an example of a submittal package that we have with our cover sheet there with our mix designs, and the second sheets with the strength certifying the concrete mixture, and then having the EPD tied to that. And what EPDs have also allowed is creating project profiles, is what we call, and calculating the carbon reductions or comparison between different options that projects could utilize with different mixes. Estimations of total carbon from the concrete, evaluating the concrete reduction options, and also just looking at benchmarks. And here's an example of some project profiles that we've submitted for some projects. And just to go through the steps here are two projects on the same site where Mills and Sunnyvale. You have a building and a parking garage. We like to work with the project team, look at the quantity of the cubic yards, identify low-hanging fruit. For example, on that building, you see 37% on the slab, interior elevated lightweight slabs at 24%, and then 11% in elevated slabs and beams, 8,500 cubic yards for those type of elements. And it's only 11% of the project, but looking at the parking garage as well, we all know the post-tension slabs drive a lot of cement and potential reduction, even 15% replacing in that cement. We have mixes that have a little higher cement replacement, but also other low-hanging fruit. You have the foundations. It's super easy to really accelerate the reduction there, especially because we do want to be cautious and conscientious with our customer base, making sure we don't impede any schedule. And then we go into the details of looking at comparisons, and we go in detail and maybe looking at the specifications and changing them, and having alternative options instead of just going prescriptive based and going more performance based. So these are some of the ways we try to take advantage of EPDs for projects and help reduce their carbon intensity for the buildings. Now, focusing on GWP relationships with other metrics on concrete EPDs, here we have 5 graphs, but we're going to be focused on 4 of them. Hopefully you guys could see that up there. The horizontal axis is global warming potential, and that global warming potential, it's going to be compared to its own specific metric for each of these graphs. So for the first 2 there, on the top, you have ozone depletion, and as you can see, as global warming potential decreases, your ozone depletion also decreases. So you got that somewhat linear type of relation. As your eutrophication decreases, very similar, you have that linear relation. But when we looked at acidification and also smog formation, it's like a buckshot. It's just scattered all over the place. And this really stood out when we were looking at LEED and trying to meet the whole building LCA credit, where you couldn't change more than 5% on any other metric. So for our market, we were running into some issues here because of what we identified was the transportation of some of our slag mixes that were coming from overseas. And just looking, you could see some of these numbers, 200 GWP compared to 400, very similar at the same. So you're trying to reduce that GWP, but the other metrics aren't being reduced. So that was an issue. And I guess this is my only political conversation here, which really just came down to, if you want to lower the numbers on the other metrics as well, we just got to look at and support industry. At the end of the day, we have to have operations here, keep steel, cement plants here, and have open conversations about how to really look environmental impacts globally and holistically, not just separate them. So decommissioning plants is not the best thing for us, so we're really trying to be sustainable and allocate our impacts to another country. But I'll stop now. Here's another example of some of that data, 4,000 PSI. The other graph was 3,000 PSI. Very similar on the metrics. And going into data collection for for ready-mix producers, we had to designate a person. That ready-mix producer has to designate a person, and that works, or get them connected to the right folks in your organization, where they're working with procurement, they're working with plant accounting, utility providers, operation, QC. They just have to get them involved in each of these departments, because what you're trying to do is create these databases specifically for A1 and A2. Let's identify that. You could use high power type of Power BI or Tableau programs to extract this information and create your these tabs on these programs, or using an Excel document and doing it manually, where you create a list of plants and you have your listed plants, and then you tie within. You could have one sheet or have multiple sheets on your Excel file. But if you have that one sheet, then you identify your product codes. These are codes that communicate with your batching programs. And that product code, you're going to have the list of product codes under each plant separately. And then you want to tie your vendor, allocate that vendor to that product code for each product code, right, for each plant. And then on top of that, vendors have multiple sites. They have quarries, they have terminals, they have sales yards. So you want to allocate that material site with that appropriate material vendor. And sometimes a product code may be used on multiple vendors. So you want to take that to account as well and allocate that appropriately. And then you have to, on top of that, for A1, A2, you want to incorporate your miles and allocate that to that one specific material site, to that specific vendor for that product code. We have cement. That's a perfect example. A few cement suppliers. And we have, let's just look at just look at one cement supplier in the Bay Area. They have multiple sources where they're pulling in cement from different terminals. And then you have to take into consideration the distribution on the percentage from those different suppliers going in as well. And those touch points, let's just focus on a cement source from overseas. You have the quarry, that transportation from that quarry to that terminal from that country, and then the mode of transportation on a vessel to our terminal, and then all the other transportation modes to our facility. So having someone designated for this and collecting this is imperative to have a good EPD program for your operations. Very similar with A3, right? You could use third-party applications, or create a database working with your utilities company, working with the account planting side or plant accounting side, looking at your energy, your water consumptions, your burner fuels, whatever you use on that side, and just really create a database to make it easy. Thank you.